Welcome back, builders. We are checking out Pyrene, Kingdom of the Bekrides this week. This is a nation that is new to DOM 6, and a lot of people have been asking, when are you going to play one of the new nations? Well, this is the time. I had other plans, but I'm a little burned out on blood hunting, and I wanted to do somebody that wasn't blood hunting, and Pyrene has become a little bit of our rival in the last few streams, so I figured it'd be kind of fun to do that. And in addition, after doing Lanka, we had a lot of fun with sticks and stones attacks, and these guys also have sticks and stones, and I wanted to see how they compared. Lore-wise, Pyrene is based on Basque myth, which is a small culture in modern-day northeastern Spain, a very unique culture in its area. And to my knowledge, we don't actually know a lot about their mythos. They had some cave paintings, and I don't believe there was a lot or any written record. It's a little wrapped in mystery, but from what we do know, it sounds like it was pretty cool, so fits right into Dominions. Let's take a look at the in-game lore and see what they're all about. Pyrene is a realm of sprawling caverns beneath a densely forested mountain range. Here the Bekrides, cave-dwelling humans, have formed a kingdom. The Bekrides live in troglopastoral lives, herding cave cows and blind goats through their vast caverns in search of mushroom meadows and muck fields filled with nutritious minerals. With the aid of ancient giants skilled in crafting and farming, the Bekrides have spread to the mountains and forests surrounding their cavernous realm. The Bekrides are primitive by most standards, but with the guidance of the Basahuanak and the Gentilak, they have learned how to craft metal, and now the Bekrides field small groups of elite warriors with metal armaments. In the mountains above the Pyrene caverns lie Mount and Boto, where the Sorginak gathers. These servants of the primordial storm deity have been allies with the Gentilak since time immemorial. Now they aid the Bekride kings as a favor to the Gentilak. In the mountains also live the Tartalo, sheep-herding cyclops of limited mental facilities. This is a nation that is decidedly a primitive nation, even for early age Dominion. So for the most part, they're using like stone weapons, they're throwing sticks and stones, a lot of furs or just some leather armor, but they have a nice alliance going on with these different kinds of giants, and the giants have taught them how to do some farming, how to do some metalworking. So we have a small smattering of a little bit of what would be considered like normal EA troops, so some early metal stuff, in addition to actually somebody who's pretty high-tech in there for early age for their sacred unit here. Looking at the national features, we are cave-dwelling humans with various giants, and I would dispute that a little bit. Our base chassis is not a human. We are decidedly a Bekride. We have generally a little bit more HP, and they come with Fire Resistant and Cold Resistant 5, along with Mountain Survival and Dark Vision 50. So, and 2 additional Strength. So they are better than a standard human stat-wise, and you don't really pay for it that much. I think the least equipped guy here, 12 gold for this is not bad. I would definitely pay 2 gold for some resistances, a survival, some dark vision. Very primo chassis for their main troops. And various giants. So we've seen some of these before on nations like Makone with the Cyclops type warriors, or these are different kinds of giants, and we will take a look at them. Economics, we get extra gold and resources in cave forts. Many times on the streams, I've asked, how do these guys afford everything? Well, they get that bonus, and between the cave-dwelling humanoids and that, they have a preference to start underground, although if there's not room, the game will spawn you above ground. And starting below ground, it is relatively common that even before you start site searching, you will find various silver mines, gold mines, copper mines, etc. And a lot of those either give you some resources and money or just a lot of money. So that is a nice bonus, especially if you're not having to compete for the caverns. You can spread out pretty well. And the income down there is good. Generally speaking, the populations, I would say, are decent. In this test game, they were a tad low compared to my other test game. But generally speaking, there's a few at least high pop areas. And oftentimes you will get crystal caverns, which have many more magic sites, so a higher chance to spawn sites. So you can have quite a good economy based on that. As mentioned before, for our military, we have our Berkrides, our humans, quote unquote, and different giant infantry, which are a little bit limited because we can only recruit them in certain places, but they are not very limited. Like you can't, it's more than just 3 per month or something like a few nations have. As for magic, we have good earth, we have good air, I would say we have good nature, we have a little bit of water. I think our highest water is just 1. As usual, we are pretty good at what we do. We are not very wide path, but these paths work very well for the type of troops and type of magic we would like to use, so gets a thumbs up for me here. Now a weakness. Our priests are weak. We only have a couple different units that are actual priests. A lot of these other giants up here are sacred, but not priests. We struggle to get blessings out, but that's not a huge problem for us. That wasn't a giant pun, by the way, because our sacred is not particularly great anyways. That being said, we will definitely consider what we want to do with our bless points because of that. As for buildings, we actually get standard forts. I kind of expected these guys to only have primitive forts, meaning that you build it and then you're done. You can't build that first upgrade that most people get, even in the early era. But we get standard forts, which is great. They're not more expensive like giant forts. They're just the standard ones, but that's totally fine. That's totally usable. We're going to want to get a lot of those up, and we can take advantage of trying to fort places that have extra mines or things like that, etc. We also get half-price temples and labs, which is excellent. We are going to need to spam some of those out. We have some foreign recruit things that require no fort, temple, lab areas, so they're going to be a bit vulnerable. So it's nice that we don't have to pay full price for those. As for our capital sites, we have the Cathedral Cavern, which gives us an Earth Gem and allows us to recruit shepherds and our sacred Holy One leaders and our sacred unit. We have the Grand Dolmen, which is our giant units and 2 more Earth Gems. And we have Mount Anboto. Mount Anboto lets us get our other cap-only mage, along with 2 air gems and a nature. So overall, I would say a good income. Earth gems are always valuable, and we're very good crafters. We can make good use of those. Air gems are valuable. This is a nation that I think you want to rush Alquils because our research does struggle, but also has other good uses for those air gems. And nature is always good to have, and we have nature mages who can take good advantage of those. So very good gem income, quite happy with those, decent sites. Starting in on our units, we have 2 distinct ones. We have our Berktide humans, and we have a couple different varieties of giant. I'm going to go ahead and start down here. One thing to note that these are relatively common indies underground in Dominion 6, and so a lot of areas you'll be able to bolster your recruitment of units you would recruit anyways, just in random provinces, and they're dirt cheap, so even bad areas you can usually grab a couple. So especially if it's along your kind of supply line, you could just recruit a few, and then as you're going to the front you can pick them up, which helps bolster your numbers quite a bit. For expansion, we kind of use the tide of Unga Bunga to expand. We don't have great elite troops. They're respectable, but they're expensive for what they are, I feel. And we struggle a bit to get them in numbers that we need. So we are going to just swarm the enemy with lots and lots of bodies. And compared to something like Shabulba, our swarms are actually pretty good. Like, they're not just junky, can't hit anything guys. So I'm pretty impressed, actually, with these units. I've questioned why the AI struggles so much to expand. There are some hard things underground, but you have troops that are cheap and deadly, and that's a great combination. Looking at just the Berkide here, This guy is the sleeper hit of our units, I think. The standard chassis that we talked about before, we've got our fire, cold resist, our mountain survival, dark vision 50%. These ones are undisciplined. We do have quite a few undisciplined troops. They are cheap at 12 gold, 2 resources, 4 recruitment points, so you can just pour these guys out, especially once you get your cap circle. You can just get 100 plus of them per turn and just drown people in them. They come with just furs, which, not a great piece of armor, but you're not paying much for it. So there is that. It ends up being 10 attack, 10 defense, and 6 protection. I give this a thumbs up as a, I guess you'd call it a light infantry, but he's wielding a length 2 great club. He has 10 attack. So even underground, where we only have 50 dark vision, so we have a little bit of a penalty here, it's not terrible. And you hit for 22 damage. So you will paste most things that you hit with that. If you hit somebody in the head, they are done. They're just done, because blunt damage gets an extra 25% damage before the armor is calculated, which is huge. So head hits are almost always kills. Like, you're just going to squish people. And they have Sticks and Stones. Sticks and Stones is an attack that it does -3 damage. It's based on your strength. We get 2 attacks, so every round we will throw 2 projectiles. So we have 15 rounds of ammunition, essentially, and it's inaccurate at -2. That all culminates to sounding kind of bad, but you can have so many of these guys. If you have 100 of these guys, you're throwing 200 projectiles around. It doesn't matter how inaccurate you are. You're just going to carpet the enemy with those Sticks and Stones. And underground, you have a decent chance of finding things that aren't wearing helmets, which, again, there's a blunt damage weapon, so you will do extra damage to. And even against things that you kind of wouldn't expect this to work against, like lava-born indies, you actually can get some kills from this, just because of, you know, you throw enough random dice at something, sooner or later you roll high. And exploding dice is a thing in the Dominion's random numbered, the DRN, which is normally 2d6, and if you roll a 6, you roll again, and you could keep going. Every time you roll a 6, you would just keep rolling. So throwing 200, 300, 400 stones at somebody, somebody's going to roll high. And this is very good, so cost effective. Another thing I love about these troops, and this kind of applies to everybody, but I'm going to specifically talk about these ones, they take buffs very well. We have some protection. It's, you know, not great, but we can buff that with bark skin or with stone skin or with iron skin. We love those. We don't have a shield, which is unfortunate, but we have a good air caster. So if we can get protection from arrows up, or we even could go up to storm. If we're not worried about our own projectile attacks, we could storm out the enemies. We love strength buffs. We're using a two-handed weapon. Two-handed weapons get an extra 25% of your strength. So if we add 4 strength, we go up to 16 here. So that would give us the equivalent of 17 strength. And yeah, 27 damage on that club is even better. And strength will increase both the range of our Sticks and Stones and the damage. So a range 16 Sticks and Stones, very good troop. I generally use these to expand with. Next up, we have the same guy, but he's now using a stone spear. It does go up to length 3, so if you're fighting other spear users, maybe you don't want to have to deal with getting repelled. We have not 10 defense skills fine, but it's not super high. Like, you will trade equally with other normal infantry, and we don't have good protection. So you're going to get repelled a decent amount on those other guys. But for me, I think I prefer the 22 damage of when I hit you, you're done, to the 14, which if you're fighting somebody that has some armor, it's still kind of a, will you make it or will you not make it? That being said, these guys are totally fine. If you maybe make a few of them, put them out front so you can have them to try to repel or not be repelled, and then your bigger guys behind them, that's a possibility. I think we have better spear troops though, so I generally don't go with these guys. Next up, we have the Bearkite Warrior. He trades out his Sticks and Stones for a leather hauberk, so he goes up to 7 protection. For 50% more resources, I do not like this troop. Going from 6 to 7 protection doesn't save you. and you can get 50% less of them because the cost is higher, and you lose your ranged attack. The one benefit of these guys is they don't have a ranged attack, so they'll close properly with the enemy. A weakness I often see when I'm expanding with these guys, when you're doing ranged attacks, your front line will be scattered because like your front runner will stop and throw at the front runner of the enemy, and the guys behind him will then be in range and they'll start throwing instead of forming a line. So every one of your fastest guys, when the enemy line does get to you, it's 3 to 9v1, and they'll just kill all those guys out front. Then they'll properly close with your front line and get into melee. The benefit, though, even with that higher attrition, is that everybody who can't reach the front line, so, you know, if you're 2 or 3 or 4 units deep, they just throw sticks and stones. And while they're not super accurate, you're also not throwing very far. I don't want to go into the calculation for precision, but you lose a lot of precision over distance, and throwing close is much more accurate, which totally makes sense, right? Next up, we have the Berkite Hunter. Now, I didn't mention on these guys, but morale 11, morale 11, morale 11. Decent, although your attrition is going to be super high, so you have to watch out for routing. The Hunters only have a 9, and that is their big weakness. However, these guys are really, really valuable. These are kind of your special forces caveman, because he has a net. And what the net allows you to do is hit things that have high defense that are 10 attack, which, remember, is going to be a little bit lower underground because we don't have perfect dark vision. When you're netted, you lose most, if not all, of your defense skill. You only get 1 shot each, but just a small group of these out front, or maybe 2 on your sides of your formation, can help net people in place, and then you hit them with that 22 damage club and just squish. So it's almost a guaranteed kill when you net somebody. Very, very powerful. These nets also are great for countering Glamour. I had to fight Tirnanog in my other test game, and they had their really buff Tuatha warriors with their Glamour and their high defense. JK, I just netted you, and then I had the giants hit you and you died. That's it. A 10 gold troop just countered your, like, I don't know what those are, 40 gold sacreds? Yep, you're done. So very, very good. They are that slightly higher price, and they do have less morale. So I wouldn't use these guys as the main bulk in front. Like I said, maybe in the front if you just want to like throw the nets and then you just kind of count them as they're going to die, and then let the guys behind them move up. But remember, if they're throwing sticks and stones, they're not going to be encouraged to move into melee. So I tend to find these guys a little bit better as like a secondary line or even on the flanks to get that net thrown. And it's only, does it say the range? I think it's melee range, essentially. I don't think these guys can throw it over multiple squares. So you do have to kind of close in to get there. But even then, like having them net the flanks and then you can wrap around and close in is very deadly. So not a general recruit, but definitely when it's needed, it is so good. Next up, we move up to the Berkite Infantry, and this is one of the first guys who benefited from those giants teaching us metalworking. He has the standard bronze equipment of the age. He has 11 protection. We're back up to 11 morale. We're also disciplined, so he is not undisciplined. Still has our standard kit here. Very respectable troop. However, I feel like he's overshadowed by the next one we're going to look at. Note here, still only 12 gold, 11 resources, and 9 recruitment. Bronze gear. So, not bad, but we could move up to the heavy infantry for 3 more resources. If I'm already buying an expensive resource troop, I think I'd rather go up to 13 protection. Arguably, you could say this is definitely in the heavy realm for early age. Still using the bronze gear. He changed out his chest piece. It went from 9 to 12. That's where the protection's coming from. Very good troop. If I'm going to use these guys, the things I like about them are we have full kit. So we have a shield. We have a helmet. So we're not going to take too much attrition from our sticks and stones coming in from behind us. The other nice thing is these guys will form a proper line when they connect because they're not going to stop and start throwing. Oftentimes what I'll do is I'll have this guy in the center of my formation with the undisciplined guys behind me, and I'll have them just attack. They'll get up front, they'll form a nice line, and then the other guys can kind of trail in behind and throw stones. If I feel I need a spear, this is my preferred spear unit. They're also, I mean, this is a totally fine heavy infantry. In fact, I would say this is a great heavy infantry because we come with some fire resist and some cold resist. So if you're fighting anyone who has cold auras or heat auras, ain't no thing. You're fighting in a temperature you don't enjoy, less fatigue. That's just great. I mean, you'd never complain about that. And frankly, paying 2 gold for that and some extra HP and some extra strength, I would do it every time. Every time. Great troop. Let's finish up with our Sacred because he is still that same chassis. I'm not impressed with these guys. They've moved up to Iron Gear, so this is like super high-tech guy for us. They're Sacred with their standard kit. They also have Bodyguard. Bodyguard is good, however, you pay for that quite a decent amount. I don't know what the exact cost of the Bodyguard skill is, but we've jumped from 12 gold to 20, and we've dropped down to a short sword. So while we do have higher attack, and we do have slashing as an option for damage type, and we do have 1 higher protection, I don't love these guys. They're not high enough HP for regen or anything. I don't love them. The one thing that they could do for you, though, we do not have magic weapons. That's one of our big weaknesses. So maybe you just take a really cheap magic weapon bless, and these guys could be your guys you recruit if you need to. Otherwise, even on people that I would recruit the Sacred, even though I didn't heavily bless them, I just generally don't even recruit these guys. Maybe get a couple for bodyguards. Wouldn't be the worst thing ever. But yeah, not impressed with these guys. Don't love them. Lastly, for troops, we have 2 varieties of Maru Warrior. These are the giant race that we contacted and allied with. They are very good. A length 3 Great Club with 11 attack and 34 damage. We've got a fine morale at 13. And we are gluttons, but we're only glutton 1. I believe that means they eat food equal to a size 7 unit. Not really an issue. And we have ways of dealing with supply very easily with this group. So you're going to be looking at humongous armies once you get off and rolling. We do keep our mountain survival, but otherwise we don't have any of the special traits that the Bearcrides have. I do quite like these guys. They only have furs again, but that's super duper high damage, and they're larger. So if you have to fight troglodytes, if you have a line of these guys out front, troglodytes are also size 6, so they can't be trampled, which can help save your giant swarms from just getting completely squished. They also, of note, do not have dark vision. Not having any dark vision means, and I kept forgetting this in my test game, you only have about an 8 or 9 attack if you are underground and you do not buff them with a way to see. So keep that in mind. That's a combination where maybe grabbing some of the net guys to filter in behind here, since they're size 6, they can come up, they'll net, and then this guy will squish them. So that could be a good combo for certain things that you're fighting. Otherwise, these guys are nice just to draw in enemy archer fire or enemy magic. They have 42 HP for only 35 gold. Pretty good. And they're not cap only. They're cap only as well as Highland and Mountain Forts. So we are strongly incentivized, and there's some reasons up here that we want to get on the surface too. But we are strongly incentivized to get on the surface and take some mountains, highlands, and forests. And these guys are another reason why. Of note, they do have 4.8 siege strength. We are a group that does not struggle with that, but it is of note. If you need to pop something super quick, these guys can help. And these guys, even more so. So these guys go hunting by throwing rocks at people, boulders as it is on this one. Same chassis, essentially. However, they have siege bonus of 5. So if we look at siege strength, 9.8. 9.8 is ridiculously good. In Indie, generally, we'll have like 0.5 siege strength, 1 siege strength, you know, something like that. These guys are so good at that. We also have good air magic, and buffing their precision can make these boulders very deadly. Very deadly. It doesn't matter if you have a good shield when you're getting hit for 39 damage. Overall, I quite like the troop lineup. A little bit of redundancy here, but most of them, except for maybe this guy, I feel have a purpose. Moving into commanders, we have a Berkite Scout. He's a fine scout. He does have all of our bonuses we've been seeing. Maybe a tad pricey. I'd like to see him for 30 gold, but with these bonuses, that's where that cost is coming from. Totally usable. He can scout for you. Next up, you have your Berkite Champion. Can be recruited in forts and all caverns. So you can get him everywhere, but he's not really good. Only 50 leadership, 12 morale. He's undisciplined. He does have a helmet, so I'll give him that. That's something. But I don't get this guy. Not useful. You'll start with one, unfortunately, as your beginning guy. If I was going to go cheap leader, I'd probably get this guy. He at least has your bronze gear, and he's not undisciplined. Otherwise, unnotable here. I'm going to skip ahead to this gentleman, the Bebrix. This is my preferred leader. He only has 75, so he still can't do formations. However, he comes in with inspirational +2. So all of our 11 morale troops now are 13 morale troops, and even our 9s are now up to 11. This is very vital. We are horde tactics, which mean we're going to have horde losses. You need that extra morale to keep your men in the fight. They are priest ones, so they can at least bless anything that you have with you that can be blessed, and they are holy. I do tend to find that there's a decent amount of undead underground, so they can help banish when you fight those provinces. Otherwise, a Holy One priest doesn't really have anything else to do, unfortunately. Yeah, they're totally fine. I generally do take a smidgen bless that helps these guys, a smidgen, and we'll talk about that when we get to blesses. Otherwise, relatively unremarkable other than just being your one good leader. Definitely going to be the one that you would want. It should be noted, I guess, these are cap only, though. So when I'm going to recruit these, I grab 2 of them at the same turn so I don't waste cap turns. And you'll need a decent amount of these because this is what you're going to probably want to be leading your troops. Next up, let's take a look at the Berkite Shepherd, who can be recruited in the capital and all non-fort caves. First glance, he looks relatively unremarkable. Leadership 20, he has Beastmaster +2, plus our standard kit. However, he can summon allies, and he summons in a Cave Cow. Cave Cows are very decent to good units. I will have that on screen through the magic of editing. Cave Cows are 32 HP, size 6, underground. I think they like eat minerals and rocks, basically. They have 100% dark vision, undisciplined animals that are cold-blooded, so those are all kind of penalties, but they have a spit attack that's range 15. We have 10 precision, so we're not bad at it. Remember, we have 100% dark vision, so we're not going to have penalties underground. It deals 10 damage, and it is acid damage. Acid damage can damage the armor on units, which makes them less protective, and they can be broken by hits. It's also a magic weapon, and you do not get your strength added to the extra damage. So I believe if you buff their strength, you can buff their range, so you could be range 19, but it won't up that damage. And in melee, we have a bite, which, not the best thing ever, but it's something. They definitely can chomp on some light troops that get to them, or maybe even get lucky and get a cav kill. The weakness of Cave Cows, and I don't know why this is the case, even though they are free spawn summon units, your Shepherd can spawn 1 per turn, they have 16 gold upkeep. And that adds up really quick, because you're going to want to have herds of these of about 20, 40 of them, because this is your good ranged attack. And, 10 of those is 160 gold a year. That's a mage. So I don't know why these have an upkeep where most free spawn things don't, but unfortunately they do. Overall, I do like getting these guys. My first test game, I made the mistake. I rushed these, not realizing that they had upkeep on the Cave Cows, and I crashed my economy hardcore. So maybe get 1 or 2 of them early. Just have a little bit of Cave Cows building up in case you have to fight some Shades or other ethereal troops. These guys will really help with that. Or even like Lavaborn. You can kind of struggle with those a little bit. But don't rush them, because you can't afford the upkeep on those, which is too bad, because these guys themselves are only 44. Next up, I want to look at this gentleman, the Tartalo. We can get him in the capital and all non-fort highlands and mountains. Great guy. He summons in, he's very similar to the Shepherd. Beastmaster, some leadership. He has a glutton, but again, it's not horrible. He summons in 2 Great Mufflon. Great Mufflon are great units. They have a 10 attack, 16 damage headbutt. They give a supply bonus of +5 each. That means that each one of these guys every turn can generate 10 supply for you, essentially, by summoning in 2 of these units. You'll have big herds of these. If I can't afford things in my capital in the early game, I tend to get the Tartalos and have them just work on these herds. They have okay siege strength if you need help sieging something. They have tons of supplies, so if you have a low pop area with weird death sight or something, they can feed your army while you go through it. They're good arrow magnets. They're good just clogging up the enemy. And they're not horrible. Like 7 protection on 21 HP. They have an attack that can hit things. Very good. And they don't have upkeep. They are 0 upkeep. Quite good. The Tartalo is also a very interesting chassis. Note, he doesn't have dark vision, so be careful if you're using him to fight underground. For 70 gold, you get 47 HP, 10 protection naturally. You could slap an armor on him, and he'd probably be good to go as just a light in-army thug. You could give him trample boots. That could be pretty good. You could give him a longbow of accuracy, which you can forge very cheaply, and it has a big precision bonus, so his low precision won't matter as much. Or maybe even like a bow of storms or something, maybe if you buff his precision. Could be really interesting. He's a cheap chassis for a lot of HP. I haven't done it, but I'm very interested in doing things with that. Next up, we have the Maru Champion. Same recruit in Capital or Highlands and Mountain Forts. This guy has Earth 1 magic, so he can buff himself Temper Flesh and, let's say, Iron Skin and Temper Will, or excuse me, Iron Will. 3 buffs and you're good to go. Throw a piece of armor on him, maybe a helmet. He's good. Again, you could maybe do Trample Boots. He is size 6. You could give him a multi-attack weapon of some sort or an area attack weapon of some sort. I think these guys are very interesting. I don't think you'd want a solo thug with them particularly. They're not killy enough by themselves, but I could totally see having a few of these in your army to just help. Yeah, definitely good. You could give him Earth Boots, which gets him up to Earth 2, and he could do other Earth things, but we have other ways of getting Earth units that are cheaper. Interesting unit. I think you have to have a plan if you're going to be getting them, but could be very valuable. Let's skip over to our other non-cap guys. We have the Bossawan. These are very, very interesting and very, very useful. They can only be recruited in non-fort forests, and cave mushroom provinces do not count for that. Sometimes those count for forests, but it does not in this case. I specifically tested that. These guys are very nice. Earth 2, Nature 1, they get a random of air, water, or nature, and they have Forge bonus 1. So pretty good for forging different things. They are your Forge bonus air crafter, meaning cheaper alquils. They have 13 research for only 128, so that meets the 1 research per 10 gold standard. They, however, because you can't have a fort, are slow to recruit. And because you can't have a fort, they're in a dangerous spot. So people would like to raid and burn down your temple. So a little difficult to get. With the same requirements of a non-fort temple lab forest, we can get a Bassa Ander, and she's very similar, loses the forge bonus, but water, earth, 2 nature with a air, water, or earth bonus. Very strong mage. You're going to want one to do some site searching for you, if nothing else. You could give her a Thistle Mace for nature 3. You could Gaia power up, and that'll take you to nature 4. So you could do big, big nature things with her. Again, 15 research for 142, so we're above what I would call average for that. Very good unit. So we are strongly incentivized to get above ground and take some territory. Finally, for our non-cap mages, we have the Berkide Shaman. This guy's iffy. He comes in with Earth 1, Holy 1, and a random of Water, Earth, or Nature. 1 Water or 1 Nature does not do overly much for you. And they are an inept researcher too. So we have 7 research for 74. Barely at that minimum value for me. But if you take magic scales or have another way to boost them with an inspiring researcher, pretty efficient. I mean, 74 gold is not too bad if you could get them up to, let's say, a 9 research. They can come from any of your forted areas, so that's quite handy. They do have some resist, which is nice to have on a mage, but your Earth Chews will be pretty valuable. Take those with your armies to buff strength and protection, etc., etc. The other ones are going to struggle. They're not super survivable, so I don't know if you'd want to put Earth Boots on them. You can make Earth Boots very cheaply, though, so maybe you just give everybody an Earth Boot and be done with it. A good unit, a little disappointing. They're relatively cheap, so you're going to get them to help with research in the beginning of the game. Does have a helmet, which is nice. A lot of mages don't wear helmets, so he's already a big brain boy, which I like. Finally, let's look at our cap-only mages. We have 2. Let's look at the Gentil first. These guys are really cool. So, size 8 giant. Comes in with Water 1, Earth 3, Nature 1, and a 10% for Water, Earth, or Nature. I wouldn't count on 10% ever. What's interesting for them is resource bonus 25. So remember, we have troops that only cost 2 resources. So even if you have a junky fort and you're struggling to get troops out, you could put a couple of these guys in there to bolster the resources and you're good to go. They also have Forge bonus 2. So you can make some very cheap items. Now, he doesn't have air, unfortunately. Hence, that other guy is your air crafter. But we could do big earth things, so dwarven hammers, earth boots. We're very interested in different kinds of armors and shields. We can make those very cheaply with this guy. He is expensive for upkeep at almost 200 gold. I tend to make one of these my profit, just to lower the upkeep. I don't know if that's the right play, though. We don't have what I would say is a great profit chassis, unfortunately. Great guy. You're going to want one of these. I tend to get one too early, though. I wouldn't get one of these until you're ready to start crafting. For almost 200 gold, you only get 15 research, so they're not very effective. They're slow to recruit, and they're almost 500 gold. That's half a fort. You're going to want some. They do very good things for you. Don't get them too early. Like I said, I tend to make this my profit. I don't think that's the right play, really, but I do it because it makes them free, essentially. We'll see what I choose to do on stream with him. Finally, we have the Sorina. Really cool mage. Air 3 right out of the box with a 10% to get air, water, earth, nature. So air 3, water 1, Earth 1, Nature 1, Holy 1. She can shapeshift into a black cat. Very versatile mage. So she is cap only. This will probably be the mage that you get out of your cap the most once you get your economy up and running. Air 3 is good enough to storm. It's good enough for cloud trapeze. She can fly, and black cats are stealthy, so you could cloud trapeze in somewhere and maybe light thug something, take some undefended areas. You could jump in to support an army that they don't know is going to have a mage support. Because she can fly and decent map move, this is probably your better profit chassis. She is also 172 gold upkeep, so she's very expensive there. Does have storm immunity, does have dark vision. Because you want tons of different magic paths, I have struggles getting things for her to cast in the early game, but going up to Evo 2 for Lightning Bolt isn't a terrible idea. Just to give yourself a good, accurate, semi-accurate killy spell that they can do if you get into a bind. Very nice. They also are the person who can craft our special national item that we'll look at. So overall, I think she would be the preferable prophet, or maybe him. I don't really see using somebody else. Maybe for the memes, I don't know. I would say we have a interesting lineup here between cheap and expensive, between normal human size and giant, between good leader and bad leaders. between cap only, foreign recruit things, quite a good smattering of different things. And mostly usable. Like, you're going to want cave cows, you're going to want great mouflons, you're going to want a good leader, interesting thug potential, unique magic that we can't get outside of our cap, great crafter and support unit. Very good stuff here. Quite interesting. I was shocked how much fun these guys were to play. I thought they were going to be a little one-dimensional, and they definitely were not. Next up, as for national items, we have one national item. We have the Flying Ointment. This is actually a pretty good item. It's expensive at 10 air, 5 nature. Requires 2 air and a nature to craft. And it is a miscellaneous slot item that gives you flying, and it gives you flying map move. Flying map move is really nice for your Prophet, or maybe your other giants, just to fly over to support an army that people don't know that you can get to. So I almost always make at least one of these and give it to my Prophet if I don't make a Signora the Prophet, so that I can move around a little quicker. Otherwise, not the greatest thing ever, but it's only crafting 3, and we're probably going to want to go up construction anyways, because we are good crafters and we have good thug potential, which, with combining with having forge bonuses, is very viable. Next up, for national spells, we do have one national spell. Our summon is this guy, and he is a ranged ritual assassin summon. So the Atski, I think? Probably mispronounced that. These are probably supposed to be Basque names, and mi español no es bueno to begin with, and my Basque is non-existent, so forgive me for the mispronunciation on names. All that being said, though, he's really cool. He is a fire-resistant ethereal trampler assassin. I'll let that sink in for a second. So if you're sieging a fort, you could send a few of these guys in there and clear out the defending commanders. Boy, wouldn't that be nice? And we can cast this natively with our cap-only mage. It's only a 3-air ritual and only 6 air gems. And while air gems are pretty valuable, I feel like this is good enough. And it is a summon, so you should get to keep him as long as he survives the assassination attempt. As a trampling non-mage unit, he should immediately charge and hopefully trample whatever it is to death. If they have bodyguards, he's ethereal, so he has a decent chance of not getting killed by them with plenty of HP and decent morale. So quite good. I'd like to use some of these and show them off on stream, hopefully. It is Conjuration 6. However, the build that I'm going to show you really likes Conjuration 6 quite a lot. So while it wouldn't be my first research goal, it would be my mid-game research goal to get to Conjuration 6. I want to talk about some other magic here, because I feel like that's very important for this nation. We have some distinct weaknesses on this nation. We have no magic weapons, we struggle to put things in formation, / we have no one who can do it natively, we have no fire magic, and we have sticks and stones, which loves getting fire arrows cast on them. And we actually have, most of our troops have some ability to have dark vision. So we would quite like to fight in the dark, but we don't have death, we don't have glamour, and we don't have fire astral crosspath, which are, to my knowledge, all the ways to get darkness on the battlefield. When we talk about pretender design, we'll look at how we could remedy that. As for magic, in Conjuration, Earth Power at 3 is very good for you. And then I'm going to skip all the way down to 6. At 6, we get our Assassin National Spell. We also get Flame Spirit. And Flame Spirit summons in a Fire 3 commander, mage, that we could use to not only do flaming arrows, we also could do the fire buffs for adding attack. And our troops would quite like that. We have a 10 as kind of our baseline attack. Going up to 12 would make them much more killy, and it would help our giants fight underground if we had to do that. So that's a very good buff that we would love to get a hold of. On the way there, we also would pick up summon gnome if we take some glamour on our pretender. And what gnomes will give us is a earth glamour caster, which opens up the ability to cast twilight and then the spell that takes twilight into actual darkness. So that's one way we can kind of backdoor into getting darkness on the battlefield if we didn't want to go for death or fire astral cross path. Quite good. Additionally, as is a favorite of the channel, we actually can use cave kobolds to their full extent. To get their resource bonus, you need them to be in a cave or on a mine. We will probably start underground so we can use that. In addition, they are glamored troops that have a magic weapon with 10 attack. So underground, you often have a few provenances or maybe even some thrones that have shades on them. Those can actually be kind of difficult for you to deal with. A few summons of cave kobolds will solve that for you with their magic pickaxe. I think they hit for 20-something magic damage. Very good. In addition to that, on the way there, you also could pick up any of the earth or nature summons. So you could do cave grubs if you really want to get into a fort really fast. You also could summon in cave crabs, can be interesting to use. And cave drakes are a high protection, big HP puddle if you need that. Lots and lots of interesting things here that you may not be able to use otherwise. Strength of Gaia also was mentioned earlier, where it buffs your nature mage with +1 nature and regen and bark skin and strength. So a very potent buff that our female mages can cast. Alteration is very good for us too. Lots of the earth buffs for protection we would love to get. The nature buffs for protection we would like to get. At 4, you can cast your Twilight and Swarm. Great spells there. Nightfall takes Twilight into darkness, by the way. And again, we would quite like to fight there. We also could buff Shadow Warriors, giving ourselves a little bit better defense, which is not something we're particularly good at. And if we go all the way up to 5, we have our Storm and Arrowfiend. You'll note most of our troops, at least our horde type troops, didn't have shields. So getting arrow protection is quite nice for them. Makes them much more durable. Evocation, we're not as interested in this as we might otherwise be. Lightning Bolt and Thunderstrike might be the exception there for our air casters. Otherwise, I'm not super into this. We can cast Rust Mist, which is kind of interesting. If you're not using the ironclad troops, this won't affect bronze or our fur guys. So decent area of effect and leaves a cloud so you can smash through heavy armored troops with your big great clubs really easy. Good against something like, say, Abyssia. Thunderstrike can be useful, good surprise. If you have got glamour, other glamour things are unlocked there. For construction, you're probably going to want to go up to 5. We do actually like timber armors because our heavier troops have gear that's good for that. And even our fur guys don't mind going up to 10 protection. Like, that's pretty solid. We're great crafters, so you're going to want to unlock at least level 5, I would say. Enchantment, less useful, especially if you don't take a pretender that breaks you into fire. If you do go into fire, though, you're definitely going to want to have that because you're going to want to be getting those flaming arrows out. Very good. Also gives your air casters other things that they can do, and is our source of Strength of Giants. So perhaps more valuable than I was letting on. Strength of Giants is such a good buff for us. So I could definitely see even maybe starting here and going for, probably wouldn't go that high. I'd probably stop at like 3 Gifts of Strength of Giants in the early game, and then swing back around to clean this up later. Thaumaturgy has our battle buff for fire. Attack +2, morale +2, great buff, absolutely great buff. And it also at 3 gets us augury, which will help us find fire sites if we do go that route. So it can be pretty good. Again, gives us a few more things we could do with our air mages. You could remote site search Earth. I don't think you really need to on this nation. Opens up some other nature things like Touch of Madness, which can be pretty good. Lots of interesting things here. So overall, we actually have a lot of different things we can go for magic schools, and I think you have to choose carefully what you want to go for. I do think rushing Alquills is very viable. Maybe rushing conj 3 plus something to do with your earth, like maybe you do like enchantment 3, conj 3, construction 3, and that's like your start, something like that. Lots of different ways you could go here. Okay, so bringing it all together, we have a really good troop lineup. We have good mages with okay availability. We're not stuck to only having cap-only good mages. However, we do need to get on the surface, and we need specifically to get a forest on the surface to get our other mages. Being able, even slow to recruit, guarantee yourself an Earth 2 guy or a Nature 2 lady is really, really, really good. In my first test game, I was not able to get above ground early on. It hurt. It really, really hurt. If you can get up there and get those, you might also get some mountains, which lets you get some more of these giants, which are useful in certain circumstances. And these guys for summoning in more Mouflon, which is very good. We have a cap-only leader that we're probably going to need, so it's good that we're not restricted only to our capital for our good mages. We have a good utility guy, and we have a good caster, although unfortunately we don't have any Air 2s to take advantage of being able to cast Storm. So if you do find an Indie Air 2, those are very, very valuable. As for Pretenders, there's plenty of options on here. I'm going to show off 2 to start with here. So this is a really cool chassis that a lot of nations don't have. He is a great Archon. And what's really cool about him for this nation, he is Fire, Earth, and Astral. And he comes in with Inspiring Researcher +2 and Alchemist. So this breaks us into the Fire that I quite like. And that gives us Earth and Fire for our alchemy spells to make gems into money. And he actually gets a bonus to it. And I believe this doubles it. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's double. So very, very efficient at doing that. Plus, he gives us Inspiring Researcher, and he raises our max magic scale. So between the Inspiring Researcher and the magic scale, that's +5 to any researcher where he's at. That takes those kind of mediocre shamans into good researchers. On him, I took Inspirational Presence, and I feel that this is really, really good for this nation. This lets that cap-only Sacred Leader have a really, really high morale bonus. It's innate, so you do not need to bless it to have that take effect. We're not good at getting our blessing out, so it's nice not to have to bless to get that. On him, I took Unbreakable, just for our other Sacred Giants to have less of a chance to take afflictions. And I just grabbed some Magic Resist to fill out the rest of the points. So, very interesting chassis, very unique. You don't see him on lots of nations, so cool to use there. Pretty good for research. You'd want him... you definitely want him to come in awake because you're going to want to take advantage of that research in the early game. Another one I made, and probably the one I will show off on stream, is a unique chassis. Only us and Agartha can get it. It is a Crystal Soul. It comes in with Earth and Glamour, and on him I broke him into Fire also. This has the same Inspirational Presence, but I went with the Glamour and 3x Heroism, which works out to, I believe, it's about 105% XP bonus. So you'll get a lot of XP on any of your leaders that you do not need to bless them to get either one of these. So blessing is only for morale bonus, essentially, or if you pick something up from a throne. And having that Inspirational Presence is really, really nice on those leaders. They let you just have absolute swarms of cavemen to throw absolute, like, blanketing amounts of sticks and stones. And it ups their morale to, I believe, 14 or 15. You have to be nearly wiped out before they will break, which is great because you do tend to take a lot of losses. He also allowed me to take magic skill up to +3. So we don't have a particularly good or bad magic resist as a nation, so I didn't feel like that was too much of a penalty. So you can see here, we have very swingy scales. We went Total Turmoil, Total Sloth, and we went 2 Growth, 2 Fortune, and 3 Magic. In addition, another thing I like about this chassis, he gives you a starting site in your capital that gives you an extra Glamour gem, just permanently. So that will give you some income so you can summon in cave kobolds, or you can use those gems later on if you've summoned in gnomes for Twilight and then nightfall. So that could be pretty darn nice for that. And you could get a cheeky little glamour item or two out of this guy. Yeah, I quite like this chassis. The Awake research really helps because in the early game you're not going to have money to get tons of researchers. And I tend to go for early thaumaturgy and start trying to augur, which is the remote site search for fire gems, so that I could hopefully get a flame spirit or two once we hit Conjuration 6 and use those to buff my sticks and stones with flame arrows, which will make them very, very deadly. And remember, most of our troops have a little bit of innate fire damage reduction, so we won't even friendly fire that badly with it. So very, very nice. Quite like this chassis. Otherwise, just looking at their chassis selection, they have the Greek Titans, they have a lot of statues, they have some of the special underground ones, most of the standard monsters. I don't believe they have anything like a special Berktide chassis or giant chassis. No. So we do have that Crystal Soul note. He's very nice and cheap. We have a very cheap Golden Pillar at 140. Pretty interesting chassis. That's kind of an undergrounder nation chassis. You could go a lot of different ways here. I don't feel that those sacreds are really worth the bless, so if you're going to take a bigger bless, you're probably looking at blessing those sacred giant mages. So consider caster blesses or thug blesses, that type of thing. Another chassis I thought could be kind of interesting would be the Serpent of Heavenly Flames, simply because he would give you cheapish fire access, and he could go out and manually site search. He would not have to rely on casting augur. And he could be present to do the fire arrows much, much, much earlier than having to go all the way to Conjuration 6 and have the gems to summon the Flame Spirit and summon one and get them to your army. So could be pretty good there. Otherwise, I guess he does have Storm Immunity. So We Are Nation might do Storm, so that could be a thing. He's an okay chassis. He is ethereal, so that's always nice. No protection naturally, though, so be careful with him. Interesting chassis, if nothing else. Otherwise, I think as long as you keep in mind that maybe an Awake Expander, although I don't think it's needed, maybe a Mage Bless, although it's okay, maybe a Thug Bless. I think you have lots and lots of options here. So very happy with all those different choices that you have. So there it is. There are my initial thoughts on Pyrene. Very, very cool nation. I almost regret putting them off as long as I did because I had a ton of fun playing the games. It is so satisfying just to have 200 Unga Bunga cavemen go in and just smash everything. It is really fun. And I think if you are quote-unquote unlucky and you get a surface start, that actually might be more powerful because you could immediately beeline a forest and get these started, which are good researchers. They're not, I mean, they're pricey. Whoops. They're pricey, but not like oppressively so. They're slow to recruit, so it's only every other turn. They could be quite good. And underground, once you get rolling, your economy will probably be pretty darn good. You can, I'd say you're at least a good matchup against anyone else who's going to be down there. And if you have any interlopers come down below, you have dark vision and they don't. So smash them early before they have ways of countering that. And I think you'll have a good time taking over the underground. All right, so if you've enjoyed this one, builders, don't forget to leave a like on this. And hey, if you haven't subscribed, maybe do that for me. And join us on stream. At the moment, streams are on Friday evenings and will be for the foreseeable future. And I'd love to see more people come out. It's a ton of fun. We joke around, we get smashed a million times and lose our profit on turn one. So always good times to be had in the Babel Building Society. I will see you there, builders.